this. Yeah.
So I was saying that I loved the series, the Secular Christ series. I thought it was marvelous. But I did have the feeling that that there was mention, but there wasn't much discussion of the idea of psychoanalysis as itself a path to salvation. Sean didn't seem to show much enthusiasm for that, that particular path. And so I thought it would be worth our while for you and I to discuss this idea, because I've increasingly been feeling that I don't want to say it is, but it can be. It can be. It is not always that. I mean, it should be, if it's operating properly, psychoanalysis should be a path of emancipation from neurosis, from compulsive repetitions. If you follow Freud, you would think that a good analysis is going to involve not a liberation from narcissism, because none of us are ever fully liberated from narcissism, but it should help people reduce their narcissism, be aware of their narcissism as a problem, as something to be worked against. It should maybe enhance a person's capacity to love. But I guess my feeling is that if it does those things with certain individuals, maybe individuals who are in some sense, we might say, called, that it puts them on a path that if they continue, it should be, it can become a path towards a kind of salvation.
And when you say salvation, are you thinking of it in a Christian sense or different types of salvation, or how are you using that word?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I'm a Christian. I become more and more as time goes on, I become more identified with the Christian tradition. I understand these mixtures of Christian mysticism with certain types of Buddhism. Sean is very interested in Shin Buddhism. And I understand what he's saying. And but I'm not particularly interested in that path. I think I take seriously something Jung said, which is, if you're a Westerner, be a Westerner. I mean, you have to somehow respect your own tradition that you grew up with. And for me, I did quite a study of Buddhism, especially of Zen Buddhism, many, many years ago. I know the literature. I appreciate some of the key ideas, that you cannot shoot the arrow and watch yourself shooting the arrow at the same time. You have to get rid of the self-consciousness, and I understand all of that, and I find it quite interesting and so on, but it's alien to my tradition. It's the Christian symbols and the Christian, I don't know, I don't want to use the word myths, but the Christian symbolic, the Christian discourse, the Christian narratives, they speak to me. They speak to my heart, not just to my mind. And so I'm not particularly interested. I know that certain great Christians, Thomas Merton, turned to Eastern thought, incorporated Eastern thought in many ways. I'm not interested in this. I'm very interested in Christianity. So I guess when I talk about salvation, I'm talking about it in a Christian context,
To be saved.
to be saved. And of course, that has to do with sin. It has to do with forgiveness. It has to do with repentance. And therefore it has a lot to do in psychoanalytic terms with my work on superego and conscience. It has to do very much with the liberation, the discovery and the liberation of conscience. And it has a lot to do with what Winnicott called the true self. You know, he didn't do much with that concept of the true self. He didn't elaborate it, and most psychoanalysts have stayed away from it. Almost on principle. They don't like the concept. And I think they misrepresent what he meant by true self. You know, he spoke almost as if he knew Zen, because he almost said that any self we know is not the true self. He almost said that because he identified true self with going on being. He identified it with being, not with knowing. And other things that he said, like, I want to be alive when I die. His celebration of aliveness is a celebration of being. So I think that the true self for me is being. It's a presence in the now. It does not involve past or future. It is being, and it is being in the now, in the moment. I think it links up very well with certain types of Christian mysticism. I've been reading Meister Eckhart and finding it very interesting. And his writing is very much about the soul. And you know, he was the Roman Catholic Church, the Inquisition. He died before they could burn him at the stake. But 13 years or 16 years earlier, they burned Marguerite Perret, one of the Beguine, a woman in the Beguine movement, and she wrote this amazing book in which, like Eckhart seemed almost to be echoing her. And they both seem to identify the soul with God. And that's what got them into trouble with the Inquisition, because it's almost they were saying that the soul is not something created by God, that the soul is God,
Right.
in some sense.
I mean, Jung was also very inspired by Eckhart, also in his definition of the self, I'd say. But just sort of going back one step, I think this question of salvation, I mean, when you wrote me and this question about psychoanalysis as a path to salvation, of course, it's like I have, you know, different reactions. I mean, one reaction is like, when I work as an analyst, naturally try to be agnostic. I try not to preach. I try not to be the guru, although you become the guru. I try to be, you know, extremely open. But having said that, my sense is that analysis is a sort of the pre-work, or analysis can be like a work to, you know, open up people to, you know, a possible religious path of salvation. So I've worked with, you know, both people from Muslim backgrounds who lost their faith, but found faith again through their processes, you know, working in the analysis. Same way with Christians. But I also work with, you know, people who grew up with the worst type of Christianity, and they would probably never, you know, turn Christian again, because they are so destroyed by the ideology and, you know, interpretations. So like their type of freedom or their salvation is almost becoming an atheist, at least for a period, you know. So, so this is just to say, I love this exploration, but I find it also, like what I do know is that I really like your work on analysis and as a process of making the conscience conscious.
Yes.
And that
Yes.
I believe in. And I think Jung, especially the late Jung, would very, very much agree with you. I think he's very, very much aligned. And as a Jungian, to speak about analysis as a form of salvation, it's not super weird. I think it's more weird as a psychoanalyst.
Yes.
Because as a Jungian, it's fine to talk about it because it is, many religiously, the mystical part is sort of bound into it. So in
Yes.
a sense, but having said that, I mean, when I practice, I try to be not Christian, but I am Christian. So I
Yes.
think,
Yeah.
so this is just to speak of this question of salvation, and that there is a tension there in this. And I guess for many people, it could be quite off-putting to think about psychoanalysis maybe as a path of salvation. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm sure. Scandalizing, actually. I mean, some of my colleagues would be scandalized. Mind you, they all know that I'm Christian. I can't
Mhm.
hide it. I try to hide it. Like my 2023 book, I tried to write it in a completely secular way.
Mm.
And then Harvey Schwartz did that interview with me. And, he said that he had never talked to any psychoanalyst who uses the word God as often as I do. And I tried to keep all of that out of the book, but it's still there. I can't keep
Yeah,
it. I
yeah.
can't, you know, but I agree with everything that you just said. I don't preach. I don't want to bring people to Christianity. I want to help heal their narcissism because every patient is infected. We are all infected by it. I could replace the word sin with the word narcissism because
Yeah,
narcissism is sin. You
yeah.
know, so I'm wanting to help people reduce their sinfulness, their selfishness, um, because it harms them. I mean, that's how one does it. One points to the painful consequences of the self-centeredness. It's not that I'm just against self-centeredness on moral grounds. No, I'm showing patients how their self-centeredness leads them to pain,
Mm.
and if they want to escape that pain, they're going to have to come to grips with the problem they have, which is being so self-centered. So it ends up, even
Mm.
if you approach it strictly from the standpoint of the pleasure principle, maximizing pleasure and minimizing pain, well, that in itself puts you on a moral path. It has to, because unless you get on the moral path, your pain goes up and your
Mm.
pleasure goes down. It's
Mhm.
pretty simple from that point of view. Um, but
Mhm.
no, I'm not trying to convert people per se to Christianity. But I with certain patients who are really captured by their narcissism, um, I sometimes, well, I don't despair, but I feel this person needs something like some shocking experience
Mm.
that the analysis cannot give them.
Mhm.
They need to have a near-death experience. They need to get cancer. They need to somehow become deeply aware of their mortality. And the analysis can go on forever,
Mm.
and it will not give them that. And not all patients need that shocking experience. I mean, some people are more open, but some patients seem to need some kind of a shocking experience. They need something from God that I, as an analyst, can't give.
Well, I mean, what do you do then? Do you just wait or do you speak about this? I mean,
I speak about it. Um, uh, I will say to some patients that patients like who have no gratitude or very little gratitude. um, you know, that's a bad way to be. I mean, when I wake up on a good morning, I'm just giving thanks for the fact that I've been given another day. Well, I'm a cancer survivor. I'm a heart disease survivor. 10 years ago, when the surgeons said that they were going to have to do a radical prostatectomy, I said to them, what if I just stand up and shake you guys by the hand and thank you very much and go my way? And the younger guy, he looked at me and he said, you'll be dead in 2 years and it'll be a painful death because it's going into your bones.
Hmm.
I said, where do I sign?
Well, I mean, also, I just want to say when you speak about, some people needing that type of experience that jolts them, I think Jung would very much agree. I mean, he speaks about the numinous experience, no? But he doesn't speak about numinosity is not just a beautiful, oceanic bliss kind of, peak of the mountaintop kind of experience. It can be cancer. Or yeah, it can be accidents. But like he says, like it's not like what really treats neurosis or heals neurosis is often, the entrance of the numinous. And that is in Jung's view, yeah, sort of God sort of, entering into one's life.
Intervenes. It could be the loss of a relationship.
Exactly.
Your partner might decide that she isn't in love with you anymore, and she might ditch you, and you might have terrible grief. So it doesn't have to be a threat of physical death. It can be a great loss.
Yeah.
It can be it could be a great disappointment of some kind. But yeah, so Jung sees that as
Yeah, I
God
mean,
intervening in a way.
yeah, and also like he says, I'm not interested in treating this or that neurosis. I'm interested in helping people to sort of have an experience of the numinous, because he also sees, of course, for dream work, for example, it can be, very touching. It can be very moving. And
Absolutely.
today also, I mean, he also had conversations with people, pioneers within the psychedelic research, and of course today that's become very popularized. And I meet
Yes.
many people who have had those type of experiences, and then coming into analysis to try to, okay, that shocked me, that jolted me, but of course then the whole integration process starts, and I think that's where analysis, again, can be one of a very very solid container for
Yes.
putting things into place. And I mean, if you, I like to think of Jung's whole project as, as a kind of smuggling in of Christian ideas. Everything most of his theory is kind of built on Christianity, I would say. If we start with the persona, which is really about, the outer versus the inner man. The outer
Yes.
man, we become, the social identity. We try to adapt.
Mask.
Yeah, the mask. So we are not ourselves, the false self, if you very, very simplified. And then,
Yes.
we have, again, no analysis works like this, but just to speak about the main concepts, that's like the outer world, outer man, and then we want to move more to the inner man. And what do we
Yeah.
encounter? We do encounter our shadow. We encounter what you said before, our
Yes.
sinful nature.
Yes.
Shadow is a way to talk, a psychological term for speaking about the sin. And I
Yes.
say, sin, and that we're all sinner. And it's not a, find your shadow and become a stronger person. No, it's look yourself in the mirror,
Yes.
see what you are. And it's a very, yeah, I would say, yeah, it's Jung's way of sort of smuggling in the concept of sin, but he calls it the shadow and working with that. And we can see that in the dreams. So we have to sort of face, again, our narcissism, as you say. But then we
Well,
also have
shadow suggests darkness. Shadow,
darkness.
darkness.
Yeah,
Yeah.
darkness, exactly. And then, of course, the big, self, in Jung's world is also the imago Dei. I mean, that
Yes.
is the image of God within man. So
Yes.
he's and in a way the Jungian process, as Jung describes it, it's about developing a religious attitude. He speaks about the religious attitude, and that means to become a follower of yourself or of Jesus or of Buddha. But it's about becoming a follower of sorts of a spiritual path. So I think
Right.
it's all summarized, I guess, in his idea of individuation. I'm not saying that, Jung has it all set, or like everyone would interpret it like this, but for me, it's like Jung is a smuggler of Christian ideas. And I think
Yeah,
it's kind of impossible almost to understand him if you don't understand something about Christianity.
yeah.
Having said that, I just want to say again, you can use his theory, and I meet many patients who are not Christians or from different cultural backgrounds, and it works really well also in that way. But if you want to get close to Jung and his thinking and what his wrestle was, I think, then you have to face the Christian, questions.
Right. It's ironic, you mentioned psychedelics, and there's such a fad now, such interest on the part of psychoanalysts, probably Jungians. Many Freudian conferences are all about using psychedelics as a supplement
Mm,
to analytic work. It's I have very little interest in this.
mm,
Because I guess it was 1967 or 68. I was doing LSD almost every weekend, like every Friday night or Saturday night, I was dropping acid. And every trip was a bad trip. They were horrifying experiences. And I kept doing it. Finally, after about a year, I asked myself, each trip is horrifying. Why are you doing this? Why are you doing this to yourself? And the answer became obvious. It was a self-definition. I wanted to be a member of the counterculture. I was a hippie. My hair was long. I was living a hippie life. It was so I had to do LSD. It's an identity card. How can you
mm,
be a hippie if you're not doing LSD? That's why I was doing it. So then I was able to say to hell with that, and I flushed it down the toilet. But I owe my psychoanalytic career to LSD, because what all that LSD did was it melted my defenses.
mm,
I was getting pretty crazy. I was being lost, like a lost boy, looking for mama, basically, not even having the language to ask. I wanted to be saved by a woman. I would not have the language to seduce her. I probably would not have been able to make love to her, but I wanted this female to come and relieve my pain.
mm,
I mean, I was reduced to the oral phase, basically, a pre-language. Um, anyway, I was not functioning well. So I initially went to a psychiatrist, and he was a waste of time because he was more narcissistic even than me. And the sessions were just intellectualizing.
mhm,
I finally, after 6 months of this ridiculous intellectualizing, I took him a picture of my mother and I'm about 5 or something. My mother is on a blanket on the grass, and she's got me around the waist. She's determined that we're going to have our picture taken, and I'm leaning back, and I got an angry look on my face. She has an angry look on her face. I'm straining away from her. This is like, and
He
part of
sent
the
you to a psychoanalyst, or
He did. He sent me to a psychoanalyst. He did. I owe him that. Um, and I
um,
went to a site. I had already been studying Jung and reading a lot of Jung and attending the Analytical Psychology Society meetings here in Toronto. Robertson Davies, various people, prominent people who were interested in Jung. But I turned away from that. Why? Because I knew that I needed immersion in the shadow. My impression was that the Jungians were doing a mad dash through the shadow to get to what really interested them, which was the archetypes of the Magna Mater and the old wise man and whatever. And I felt that they didn't really have very much tolerance for the shadow. I knew I needed years of shadow work.
mm,
That's why I went to a Freudian,
mm.
because that's where they work all the time, is in the shadow, right? There isn't anything else beyond the shadow very much in psychoanalytic theory. But I never got back to Jung until you helped me by telling me about that wonderful essay, A Psychological View of Conscience.
And your son is also into Jung, no? And he's also studying Jung, or
My son was quite interested in Jung. Yeah, he's in analytic training, so he's reading mainly Freudian material now, but he's always
yeah.
quoting Jung.
Yeah, but that, I mean, our conversation today, it is rare, still that Jungians and Freudians or psychoanalysts have, a thorough conversation about this. And I mean, I hear this from my field all the time, and I feel more and more young Jungians, they longing for connecting with psychoanalytic thinking, but it's just absurdly split still, which is so
It
ridiculous.
is absurd. I
Yeah.
have two Jungians, one in Australia and one in London, England, and I've been supervising them
Mm,
for a couple of years now. We have great
mm,
conversations, and
mm.
so there's this kind of cross-fertilization is really good. And since talking to you, I've been reading Murray Stein and others, and I got very interested in the individuation process. I
Mhm.
find that central to my own thinking. I think it's a wonderful way of conceptualizing what we're doing in good analytic work. Um,
Yeah, I mean, something that I love so much about the Jungian work, but there's also a lot to critique, and there's a lot of, still hero worship, and, still many, psychoanalysts inside the psychoanalytic tradition has been much better in developing itself. Jungian tradition, yes, there are, interesting clinicians, but a lot is still sort of going back to Jung and to the early days, and but I think one thing that I'm missing in the Jungian work that I found through psychoanalysts and also through the work that you're doing, that is, again, just the central emphasis on love.
yes,
And Jung actually shied away, and he was public with this. He kind of shied away from talking and writing much about love, which is, interesting. I mean, he speaks a lot about wholeness and, becoming a whole person and individuate, but he does not speak much about love. And that is something that, yeah, if we compare these two traditions, I feel like, yeah, that the Freudian or the psychoanalytic tradition has this always this emphasis or always the central point. And when Jung
yes,
speaks about the self, he doesn't speak about love. He doesn't speak about, self, giving, or no. He speaks more about integration, wholeness,
yes,
and integration. But if you look at his last essays, and I'm going to go to Zurich in August and do a lecture on this, because I try to understand how far can you follow Jung in regards to Christianity, and where does one, at least
yes,
I, have to depart from him? Where is it just like, no, 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 this is like, this doesn't make sense, and there's
right.
a lot of things that doesn't make sense there. But if you look at his late essays, what's so interesting is that he starts to speak about love.
Oh, he
He
starts.
starts to write. I mean, the essay on conscience. I mean,
Yes,
it's kind of masked under the term conscience, but what is conscience but love? So it's
yes,
there. And also another late essay of him, The Undiscovered Self. It's like he speaks about caritas. He starts to look at, and he again and again comes back to Christianity. And he doesn't come back to, Christianity, in this sort of weird interpretation of adding a fourth or Satan marrying with Jesus. No, no, not that stuff. He's finding back to original Christianity. He says we have to go back and meditate on the central mystery. So in his last text, there's a more humble, I would say, Jung, which is not trying to synthesize a new sort of model, but more sort of leads to, yeah, we need to work on this concept. We need to work with conscience. We need to work with caritas. We need to go back to the basics. We have to re-understand again what's really meant, yeah, in the scripture, and
that's
really think
very interesting.
I find it interesting.
Send me your lecture when you finished it. I'd love to hear this. Um, that's very encouraging. Well, what you're saying is that he is overcoming his narcissism.
Mm.
I
Mhm.
mean, because the opposite of narcissism is love. And he spends a lot of time not talking about love. And then towards the end, he's starting to talk about love. In other words, he's getting healthier.
Yeah, I mean, this is, that's his writings that I'm really interested in. Is like it's 80, it's between his 80 to his 85, yeah, when he passes away, 86. So it's like,
Death is
let's read it,
coming.
and those are the essays. Those are the beautiful essays where he's open. They're more fragmentary in style. Somehow they're not sort of finished and they're not fleshed out fully, but they seem to me, yeah, it's like the naked Jung is is raw. It's like,
Because
yeah,
death is coming, because
yeah,
he's facing death,
exactly.
which is that very existential shock that we were talking about that is often needed to open someone up, right?
Absolutely. And
Uh,
on that, I just want to say he wrote, the Red Book, and there
yeah.
was a painting in the Red Book which is very interesting and very beautiful, that he started painting around when he was maybe 35, 40, and then he took it up, that drawing or that painting, in his early 80s, and he couldn't finish it. He couldn't finish it, and when he was asked why, and what was, he said it has to do with death. And the drawing is like, yeah, there is like a self symbol, kind of Jungian symbol, like a self, with a lot of color and such. But around that, it's just he's drawn all his ancestors, all his ancestors.
He drew his ancestors.
Yeah, it's like small figures of all his ancestors, and
Okay.
then until they become just bones. It's a very interesting drawing. I send it to you, but it's not finished. And just like the Red Book, he also picked up and wanted to continue to write, but he couldn't finish it. So there was
Interesting.
something in his whole project that was left unfinished. And I think, this is just, but I feel like he left something for us to sort of pick up that has to do with love and has to do actually with bridging, traditions, because that's also where it broke down between him and Freud.
Right.
I mean, it was narcissism. It was around, a certain type of erotic, transference that, where,
Right.
yeah, things broke apart.
But I mean, Freud's 1914 essay, to me, is the peak of his work. He departs from what he sees there. He sees there that the whole of psychoanalysis is about overcoming narcissism and learning to love. He says it very clearly. We must either learn to love or fall ill. We must fall ill if we can't love. But then he leaves that because he knows that puts him in the same camp as the Abrahamic religions, which he hates, right? So he stops talking that way. It all becomes conflict between superego, ego, and id. And it's all about internal conflict and compromise formation and defenses and so on. If he'd only been able to hang on to what he saw in 1914, that the essence of psychotherapy, the central problem in all psychotherapy, is narcissism, and the cure is love. It's that simple, really.
Mm, mm,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
And
Freud
yeah.
did see it clearly at times, but he couldn't quite hold that, or he couldn't talk about it explicitly. I mean, at the very end, he comes back to the duality between Eros and Thanatos,
Mhm.
love and hate. So he comes back to it. He never loses it entirely, but yeah,
Mhm.
he can't keep it clearly as his central focus as to what psychoanalysis is really about. Um,
Mm.
but that's very interesting what you say about Jung. It's very encouraging to think that as an old man approaching death, he's starting to overcome his narcissism, and he's beginning to talk about love, caritas. That's great. I like this idea of Jung groping towards a cure.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, I find, I also find that, that's also where I find the weaving of traditions interesting, because I think there is something in your tradition that you spend most of the time with, that is, that is under, valued in the Jungian tradition. It's easily things are spiritualized, or, yeah. Of course, we have also a relational move within Jungian analysis and such, but when we talk about love, we're talking about love. We're talking on different levels of and different forms of love, no?
Yes.
Because if this is a discussion around salvation and around Christianity, there's again in the Jungian field, there's a lot of discussion around eros. And eros is, of course, a relationship, and that is, very important for, the transference and the work we're doing. But there's, when we speak about caritas, or when you start to speak about agape, yeah, very similar.
Yes.
That's, a different type of love. So I don't.
Yeah, I mean, we can get so confused about Eros. I mean, my wife, I think, is a bit surprised because she always was, and in my view still is, a very beautiful woman. And she thought that my fascination with her, that my obsession with her was about her beauty. Uh, because she just, I happened to find a woman who just met all what Freud called the conditions for loving. She had all the conditions, everything that I wanted in a woman, And she thought that my preoccupation with her was about her beauty. Okay. Well, so then I have 10 years ago, I have a radical prostatectomy. And then I'm followed up with radiation and then anti-androgen hormone, because you've got to get rid of all testosterone because testosterone is cancer food. So you have to get rid of the testosterone. So there goes my sexual libido. Eros in the narrow sense is long gone. But I am as obsessed with this woman as I ever have been. It comes from my heart. It turns out that all of that beauty and the sexual attraction is like the cherry on the top of the sundae, but that sundae is it's a heart connection, right? And she's finding it hard to sort of really fully believe that. But I've learned something there about the nature of love. Erotic love is the lowest form. It can be wonderful. I'm not knocking it, It was great. I had a great sex life. It was great. But real love is much bigger and deeper and beyond the merely sexual. Yeah.
And what about the love of your neighbor? Is that something you're thinking of as well?
Well, yeah. I well, to me, that takes us to politics. My love of my neighbor, in my case, it's a love of democracy. It's a love of democratic institutions. It's a love of the law and of respect for the law and due process and habeas corpus. And I mean, democracy is an attempt to put together a loving civilization, a loving polity, where there are rules and there is right and there is wrong. And there is an attempt to achieve a system of justice. This is love of neighbor. And so I am as concerned, I'm almost obsessed with that. I'm spending too many hours a day reading the news and trying to find journalists who I can trust to tell the truth. And I try to keep up with what's going on. I spend a lot of time, I'm very concerned about the decline of democracy. I would make the case, I will make a case that Donald Trump is the Antichrist. He's a thug. He's a gangster. He's a destroyer. He's a liar. He is the worst. And he's in the White House.
Mm. Do you think also that psychoanalysis is helpful helps people to feel more love for their neighbor as well? Is that a part of this love cure, or is it?
It's if it's functioning properly, yes. If it does not have that effect, it is not a good psychoanalysis. mind you, there are certain people who are so sick, so trapped by their narcissism that psychoanalysis can't get through to them.
Mm.
And these people who are the Donald Trump, they don't come near a psychoanalyst, or they come for one session and they're gone.
Mm.
They certainly don't stay with me, that's for sure. Um, but then there are many people who will stay in analysis for years and not change fundamentally.
Yeah.
And those are the patients that at times I want to pull my hair out. I want to hand them 1,000 micrograms of acid. Try this, or maybe if you're lucky, you'll be narrowly missed by a car on the street, and that'll shock you. But you need some kind of shock.
Mm.
But it's not my job. I'm not God, so I don't hand out the LSD. I don't hand out the shocks. Um, I sort of include these people in my prayers. I mean, I work with them. I've come to very much be attached to them. I like them. I care for them. I find them exasperating. Uh, are you ever gonna get it? I don't say this to them, but that's what I'm feeling, what I'm thinking. Are you ever gonna wake up? Oh, you're breaking another girl's heart. Haven't you broken enough girls' hearts already? Uh,
Mm.
it's very frustrating with these very recalcitrant. These are people who are lost in their narcissism, and at times I can feel quite impotent to bring about. Dreams are wonderful. Dream work has become more important to me over
Mhm.
the years.
Yeah.
I forget the name of the book, but it was written by a Jungian trained man who was an Episcopal priest, and he wrote a book
John
called
Sanford.
Sandford. Yes, what a great
Yes.
book that
Yes.
is.
Dreams or another one?
Well, I've
Yeah.
read two of his books, but I was thinking of the one on dreams.
Yeah, he's
He sees
excellent.
them as messages from God.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, exactly. No, that he's fantastic. He was fantastic. And I
Yeah.
think his analyst was this Fritz Kunkel, who was also a Christian
Kunkel,
Jungian.
yes, who
Yeah.
I can't find anything much about him, a
Ah,
little bit.
yeah. I had a conversation with someone who's a specialist in him, but books. There are some books to be found on AB books and such, but it's a bit old. Yeah, his way of writing, it's not doesn't really feel up to date to me, but I think
Right,
his way of thinking around, yeah, Christianity and analysis is on the point. And
right.
Sanford sort of took him to heart, yeah. And Sanford
Yes,
also wasn't afraid to criticize Jung's view on evil, for example. Sanford
right.
was really following Jung far, but then like, nope, here's like,
Here's where we part
yeah,
company. And as you know, that's where I part company and Sean as well.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, yeah,
But Sanford, I would like to have all practicing analysts read Sanford because I think he's absolutely right about dreams. So I press patients who don't remember their dreams, I press them. I say, when you go to bed tonight, when you put your head down on the pillow, ask yourself the question, will I dream tonight? Will I have a dream to take to dawn tomorrow? I urge them to say that to
yeah,
themselves.
yeah,
And it sometimes produces the dream.
yeah. No, I think also, I mean, in the Jungian tradition, I feel like, again, we can talk about the concepts, but what I really appreciate most is the sort of emphasis on the dream work and letting the dream lead, in a sense, the analysis
Yes.
and letting the dream help to unfold, what are the issues we need to work on.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dreams are remarkable. They're a gift from somewhere, from someone, um, and they are invitations to. And I'm very respectful of the patients' associations. I often have an instant sense of what the dream's about, but I try to
Mhm.
shut up about that. And,
Yeah.
and I try to draw the patient's associations out. And it can be remarkable. Special sessions where something really lands, something happens in the session, something deep
Yeah.
gets clarified. And yeah, dream work is wonderful in that way.
Yeah, and as Sanford points out, I mean, you can't read the Bible without noticing, that dreams is the sort of, yeah, that's the way that God communicates
Yes.
throughout. I mean, it's just remarkable how many dreams and how the importance of dreams in the scripture.
Right. So coming back to Eckhart and Marguerite Perret, who they burned at the stake, for suggesting that the soul is God, is linked to God, and therefore self-realization, soul. I gave a talk on soul making. That's John Keats' phrase.
Mhm.
Consider, if you will, the world as the veil of soul making. I gave a talk about that. I have to give another talk now because that is very incorrect. We don't engage in soul making. Nobody, no one other than God makes the soul. We engage in soul realization, soul discovery,
Yeah.
but
Well, I
we
love
don't
this.
make it.
No, I mean, I love the definition of self-realization from Kierkegaard. Like he's emphasizing, yes, yeah, it's about realizing that you have a self.
Yes, yes. But then would you go further and say that this process of self-realization, um, somehow I could see how this could go wrong and lead to all kinds of inflation and psychosis, actually. But is soul realization, does this mean that that there that there is some kind of unification between God and the self, that at the deepest level of the soul, one encounters God, that on some level, God and the soul are one.
Well, I mean, Jung would speak about that it's the image of God. So it's not maybe God, but the image of God in man.
See, that doesn't work for me because I'm
But
very
we're made
Protestant.
in his image.
Image, yeah, I understand. But the Bible also says, thou shalt not worship graven images. And I'm enough of a Lacanian to understand that in the mirror phase, we come to believe we are the image in the mirror, and we spend our lives polishing our images. And that is narcissism. Narcissism is an obsession with images. So
Well,
for me,
exactly, but it depends a bit maybe how we define. I think Jung said that in order to not be called a mystic, I think you could say it's God working in you, but like what we know, yeah, when he speaks about the self, he speaks about it as an image of God, and we can see that in dreams. So I hear what you're saying, but I don't think we speak. I mean, we speak
okay.
about images that jolts people. We speak about not of a. So I'm just saying that I think that it's not a, yeah, that the image is not a some like distancing, or I think
Mm.
like, or if you follow a dream, it's the image that creates the emotion that has the effect on people often to
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I have no problem thinking that images can lead us
lead us.
towards God. I have trouble with the even concept of God. Um,
The concept of God.
yeah, like I'm sympathetic with the Jews who won't even spell the word. They write G-D. They won't spell the word. I'm very iconoclastic.
Hmm.
The breaking of the icons, any self I know is not the true self. Many years ago, I read studied this Indian guru, Ramana Maharshi,
Mhm.
via negativa. His meditation is asking, who am I? I am not this. I am not that. I am not that. I am not that. Well, then who are you? Any answer, you are not that. So it brings you to the mystery and the not knowing. Um, Anyway, images can lead us somewhere. They can be valuable. The dream images are very valuable in leading us through the individuation process. But when the idea of God as an image or an image of God, to me, every image of God is a false image.
But we are made in the image of God. I mean, that's, I think, is the Kierkegaard or Jung would speak of that as that's a truth that, psychologically we need to work
Yeah.
with, or that's like a template.
Yeah, very often, I mean, many Protestant, at least theologians, when they say we are made in the image of God, they tend to associate the divine element in us with reason. And I reject this totally. If God is in us, it is not in our reason, it's in our hearts, it's in our conscience, it's in our capacity to love. That's what is in the image of God, is our ability to love. It's not our ability to reason. I'm an anti-rationalist. Look, I like science, but reason has its limits. I mean, David Hume explained the major limitation of reason in the 18th century. You cannot deduce an ought from an is. Reason can tell you what is. It can never tell you what ought to be. Okay, so yeah, I don't want to identify imago Dei with our reason. No, with our hearts, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think Jung would speak more about wholeness there, or that the self is yeah, it's a coming together of opposites and a resolving of a conflict through this.
Conjunctio, what is it?
Yeah,
The
mysterium conjunctio.
Mysterium conjunct. Say it again.
Mysterium conjunctio, or
Conjunctio.
yeah. But I mean,
Okay.
this is again, yeah, opposites coming together and creating something,
Yes.
a
Yeah.
whole, a one. But yeah, 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 yeah.
Right. So
So,
so many questions here, but it's great to talk to you about this. We both are clearly understanding clinical psychoanalysis as a path towards, maybe, would you say wholeness? Would you still say wholeness in that Jungian way, or would you?
I don't like wholeness so much, because it seems to me that it's sort of just, it's too much the individual. I understand it, but it's like I prefer.
Again, too
I
much the
Yeah,
individual.
yeah. I think it can become. I mean, as you know, analysis has so much to do with breaking. I mean,
Yeah.
things breaking. It's analysis, and Jung loved to use the word analysis. Chemistry means dissolve. Things loosen up.
Yes.
Analysis is about loosening up complexes.
Well, breaking, you know that Jacques Lacan says the analytic cure is acceptance of castration,
Right.
acceptance
Yeah.
of lack, loss, breaking, brokenness.
Yeah. Yeah. And in the Jungian tradition, there was like a group of people who really went against this idea of wholeness because of its dangers. It's linked to fascism, you could even say.
Yes.
It can be taken very far, this idea, and it's a very tempting idea. But that's where I find again love is a better center. I
Yeah.
think the self is, I'm closer to you there. And when wholeness, yeah, I don't know exactly what Jung puts in it, but I think love is the center, and love is the self, and that has to do with conscience. And I do believe that this type of work is yeah, it's a process of opening up
To
and
the
learning
other,
to love. Yeah.
opening up to the other. I mean, so many people don't, a lot of people, well, we've been living in what Christopher Lasch called the culture of narcissism for 50 years. That book was written in 1979.
Mhm.
And it's just gotten worse and worse and worse. And of course, Trump is the ultimate manifestation of this. And it's a sickness. And we have become, as a society, Western civilization has become more and more sick with this narcissistic condition. And there are young people nowadays who don't even have a sense that other people are real. They might be robots. They might be artificial intelligence. And one such young man came, my son insisted that he come in person to his office, and my son has a dog, and the dog is not used to people coming to the house, and it went bark and jumping all over this young man, and he happens to like dogs, and it became pretty clear to him that this dog was real. And then he figured, well, if the dog is real, maybe my son is real. And then the therapy,
Beautiful.
got going that way. But yeah, do you think people are real to Donald Trump or Elon Musk? They do things that are causing thousands of people to die, babies to die, starve to death. I mean, obviously, these people are not real to them,
Yeah. Yeah, no. I mean, that's where the zeitgeist is moving, and we're all moving into this simulation, type of society, as we know, and it's going to go much faster. But I also think the counterculture, or the counter movement of that is realness, and
Yes.
analysis can also be a process of realness, and that's painful.
A
But
process of what?
of realness, or like,
Realness,
yeah, becoming
authenticity.
real, being honest,
Yes.
yeah, being authentic, being honest, and relating to people, not as a transactional goods, but as, yeah, like
Yeah,
seeing
well,
people.
where did the Trump regime begin? In the first Trump presidency, that was, um, the beyond truth, all of the, remember the discussion about truth, alternative facts.
Right. Yeah.
And Elon Musk actually says that empathy is what does he call it? A mistake, a flaw, that our society went wrong because it got too much involved with empathy. It leads to the failure of civilization, he believes. It's like he's saying, if you want to be a strong man, empathy will undermine you in your strength. Well, if a bully starts having empathy, his life as a bully is going to end.
Right. Yeah. Well, do you think there's any Jesus character that's going to come and save us?
I don't know. I'm not seeing anything that really impresses me. Look, I'm a Canadian, so I am very impressed with our new Prime Minister, Mark Carney. He's an adult. He's the adult in the room. He's calm. He's very smart. I have high hopes. I'm not seeing him as Jesus, but he is a devout Roman Catholic. Goes to church every week. This is not played up by the media, but he's a serious Christian. He doesn't talk about it. But he's smart. He was the governor of the Bank of Canada, then the governor of the Bank of England. And he represents salvation for my country. If he had lost the election, the conservative leader, we call him Maple MAGA or MAGA North.
I hear you.
The dollar store Trump, we call him. No, he was pushing the same nonsense as the Trumpians, and so we got a minority government. He's 4 seats short of a majority.
Yeah.
But he represents a kind of salvation for Canada.